and I think it's counting down to alive. Bear with me. And we are live. I can actually see us on Facebook. Hello, everybody. Good evening, Australia. Here we are again on a Sunday on another episode of the Atomic Self-Love Project. Welcome to the last day of the month. I hope you are having a beautiful start to the week or end of the week, whichever you look at it. So tonight I am so excited because we are speaking to a very, very special guest, and she is all the way from Canada. It is actually 3 o'clock in the morning for her. So I do feel very honored for Allysha to really make this time to have a conversation with us tonight. So I'm going to try my best to be able to ask her questions that I know you might be asking in behalf of everyone, because we're going to be talking about real life magic. But for those of you who have never been to the Atomic Self-Love Project, I wanted to welcome you first of all. And if you haven't met me before, my name is Grace Harris. I am the host of the show every Sunday at 7:15 Australian Eastern Standard Daylight Saving Time. I hail from the Gold Coast, which is the border of New South Wales and Queensland, originally born in the Philippines. As you can see, I am not exactly Aussie looking. But the Atomic Self-Love Project is all about creating an extraordinary life. And I serve women mostly to become the person that is the highest versions of themselves, motivated by their full potential. And Atomic Self-Love comes from a concept that I have been speaking about for the last 3 years as a speaker, which is paradigms of self-love. And simply speaking, paradigms of self-love is just two things. It's either that you have a fear-less paradigm or a fear-based paradigm. And I've discovered one thing is that we all love ourselves, right? Well, wherever we are in our lives, children, adults, young adults, grandparents, or whatever stage of life, whatever decision we make, it's all about protecting and nurturing ourselves and the people that we care about. But what I've discovered is we usually go on with life until time immemorial and just practicing the self-love that we've learned to be how it is from the belief systems that we've inherited from the people that raised us in our formative years. That's from when we were born and until we're age 12 or 13 or 14, until our egos are fully formed. And so we don't bother questioning where our beliefs come from. And a lot of times I discovered is that we act on decisions that are sometimes, or even more often than not, fear-based. For example, I know that I was in a career for a long time only because it was necessary to earn the money, to have food on the table, to have shelter above our heads, and to get by every day and to do what the Joneses are doing, keeping up with the Joneses, so if you will, traveling. But I never really questioned, is this what I love doing? Until one day, a catalyst had happened in my life, a big thing, an event happened in my life, so that I had to question that and really go into what's happening here. How come whatever I do, whatever I achieve, career-wise, material-wise, I don't feel that fulfilled? And so the paradigms of self-love was born out of my inquisition from my own life and the lives of others. And the Atomic Self-Love Project is in fact a real project that I do with women as a 30-day project. But the concept itself is that one day someone said to me, Grace, I understand the paradigms of self-love, but do you not just need one paradigm to change your life? And it was so true, because atomism in the old, before science, the concept of atomism is like one thing that's uncuttable, one thing that cannot be any smaller. This is before they discovered molecules. And I always, by the way, there's a few people on the line, so put on the chat where you're hailing from and say hello. We'd love to hear where you're from. And I always love to recall the story of Wonder Woman, which is a movie released in 2017, not the one that's released just then, but the original Wonder Woman, where there was this scene in the end of the movie where she was battling, having a battle with her own father, Ares. And she was so tired and she was about to give up. She was wrapped in a metal and it was just too hard for her. Her own father was a lot stronger than her, or so she thought. And then the love of her life flew in an airplane in front of her, and she saw what Steve had chosen to sacrifice for so that he can save the world. He was willing to sacrifice his own life, flying an airplane full of bombs that was originally meant to blow up the world. And when she saw this sacrifice, the sacrifice of love, she then remembered her own superpower, which is really intrinsically love. It's got nothing to do with physical strength or the lasso of truth, really. It was more about that she loved the world too much to let it go, to surrender, to give up. And it's the atomic love. And so I believe that we all have an atomic kind of self-love. I believe that when push comes to shove, especially working with women, and I know for a fact with women, I can't speak so much for men, although I can imagine it's not going to be so much different. But as women, when push comes to shove, when something happens in our lives and we are being called to rise above any circumstance, we have one superpower. Whatever that is, if your superpower is hope, is faith, it could be love, it could be resilience, it could be compassion. You have one superpower that really allows you to draw that strength out and just overcome something that you might have originally thought you could not overcome. It could be a near-death experience, just like what happened to me. It could be a loss, it could be a betrayal, it could be an illness. And I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Just when we think we could go on no longer, we draw upon the atomic self-love and we rise above and we become the best versions of us. And so this show is here to just really stimulate your sense of self-love, your sense of magic. So I want to introduce my guest tonight without further ado. And her name is Allysha Lavino. Allysha is a history geek, spiritual seeker, writer, and world traveler, specializing in hidden history and trends of language and culture across time from prehistory through the modern era. Allysha is passionate about making ancient wisdom accessible to a modern audience. As a visionary fiction author, her books invite the readers to step into the story and experience the magic of our ancestors. Her recent novel, The Heretic, or am I reading that? It could be the Heretic or the Heretic. I know it means it's the word is similar to the word, to the meaning of being a rebel, a good, unbelievable rebel. So the Heretic follows the story of real life ancient secret hidden in code. Allysha is founder of Sacred Mystery Tours and is excited to announce the launch of her latest project, Real Life Magic, in 2021. And there's a fun fact about my guest tonight. Her friends would say something like "pull an Allysha," which really means like something like in my own speak, in my travel speak, I used to call it wingit.com. But what it means is that Allysha would just jump on a plane or go to a country with, nothing much prepared, but just her spirit. And it just turns out to be a magical experience. And I think that tonight it's going to be a fun conversation, but also a lot of ideas that we have kind of forgotten because we have become so civilized and so efficient, almost even in life, that we have forgotten to just be and just become who we are naturally. So without further ado, my friend and my guest speaker, Allysha Lavino, are you with me tonight?
I'm here. Thank you for having me, Grace.
That is my pleasure. Thank you for making the time. Allysha, what you do for the world and your cause is really, it takes me back to a time where I'm carefree and I'm innocent, like childlike feeling. And so before we go on to what you do now, um, give us a little bit of an introduction of the young Allysha. Where did your passion come from?
What a great starting question. I actually used to lie in bed at night. It's 3 a.m. here. I've always been a night owl. And I remember so often getting sent to bed, and I would lie there and I would just think about the world. And all of these different kinds of ideas that, looking back, seem very big for a small child used to just wander through my mind. And I had nothing to do but just lie there and think about them. And I remember one night in particular, I was probably somewhere between 11 and 13, right at that age where you're starting to question the world and it's not making a whole lot of sense. And I was lying there going, wait a minute. I have to go to school and get good grades so that I can get into a college and get good grades. And then I'll get a good job and work for the rest of my life. Like, this, why, what's going on? Well, okay, well, why do I have to do that? Who set that up? Who figured that out? And I thought, well, my parents are telling me I have to do that. And I thought, well, who told them? Well, their parents told them. Well, who told them? Well, their parents told. And all of a sudden I'm lying in bed and I'm this early adolescent and I'm like, we are listening to cavemen. Cavemen said that we have to work hard for the rest of our lives. And it was like the roof just blew off the room. And I realized this fundamental idea that has carried me through my life and made it easy for me to be a heretic and a rebel. It made it easy for me to question and be courageous in bucking the system in ways small and large. And the idea is this, that nobody really knows what they're doing. We're all making it up, and we're doing it with the best advice that we have from the previous generation. And sometimes the previous generation is really brilliant at telling us, what's going to kill us, what's going to keep us alive, what is healthy and what is not healthy. But sometimes the previous generation has outdated ideas, and sometimes the previous generation just hasn't figured it out yet, right? Because every year, every decade, every century, every millennium, we're building on the knowledge of the past. And so that entire sort of revolution in my thinking as a young child made me feel really good about having new ideas. I still listen to the ideas of my parents and my grandparents, and I particularly listen to the ideas of my grandparents because I thought, well, they're the ones who told my parents. So let's see if there's anything in this. But as I took that, I always knew that it was my job to build on that every generation was going to take everything we have from the past and bring it forward and build the next thing. And so my mom teased that I would just sit around and read big history books for fun. By the time I was in high school, I was trying to figure out how all the pieces of the world fit together and the people and the places and the times. And so this is why I call myself a history geek. I'm not a historian. I'm just somebody who's really passionate about the way that things work, and particularly the way that humans fit into the whole planet Earth thing.
I love that. I love that. I imagine you to be not so much a child as you were telling me, but this entity who's really born specially to become almost like a mediator between the past and the future, because as you know, all of our parents and grandparents, I would safely say 95% of them feel that their job is to tell us this is how it was, and therefore this is how it needs to be. So it's like, this is how we did it correctly, we survived, we're okay, you've got to do it this way. And so we spend most of our times trying to say, no, really, it's different now. However, you seem to be someone who's been sent from the future to just to acknowledge that the building upon every generation is a natural evolution. And you were there to uncover this ancient wisdom and all these fun things about the history, but also to connect that into what is possible, really, what is possible and what's going to happen. And so amazing. Now so first of all, did I pronounce that word right, the heretic or the heretic, which I don't even know.
So this is heretic.
Heretic.
And it's, you know, it's a really interesting word because it's the word that was used for everyone who did not believe in the universal Catholic religion. And so the heretics were the ones who were burned at the stake, and the heretics were the ones who believed something different. And so on the one hand, you've got this word that still kind of gets people's skin tingling a little bit. Like there's a lot of juice, there's a lot of fire still in that word. And at the same time, what I love about this word is it comes from ancient Greek, and it comes from heretikos, which actually meant one who is able to choose. And so here you've got the word Catholicism literally means universal, right? It was this one religion for everyone. And anyone who is able to choose is a heretic, because you're not supposed to choose. You're supposed to go with the universal way of doing it, right? And it's the same idea that we were just talking about, you know, the tradition. And I love ritual and tradition and, you know, and respecting the things that have come before. But at the same time, I think it's so important to have that ability to choose, to see the value in what's come before, and then to look and say, well, what applies to me right now?
Wow, delicious. So Allysha, how have you chosen to choose? And what of your choices showed you so far that's really going to, that you feel is amazing, and what we can take from it? Tell us.
Wow, what a big question. um, you know, I think choice is something that shows up every day. And so how we apply choice, it can look like anything. You know, one of my things that seems really simple and silly and trivial is, as I was, you know, coming up in the world, I worked as a barista. It was my all-time favorite job. And I'm like a writer and I travel, and still like barista just holds the most special place in my heart. And wherever I live, wherever I am in the world, I have a ritual around coffee. I make my own coffee. And here at home, we have a special grinder, and I make this really decadent latte every morning. And every morning it sets me into my day. I don't drink coffee for the caffeine, to stay awake, all of these, you know, sort of reasons that the culture might do it. I drink my latte to kind of say, wow, it's a day, and this is a moment to be alive. Like it's a special thing that I do every single day. That might seem like a really small answer to the question, but I think that when we talk about choice, or when we get on interviews, we tend to talk about all the fantastic and amazing things we've done. And I've done those as well. A lot of us have. But I think that what is important right now, especially when things are on hold a little bit in a lot of places, and still there's so much real possibility to live a glorious life, to wake up in the morning and read that book that just lights you up. And so I live a life that I've designed. You know, I'm a writer and an entrepreneur. I own a few businesses, one of which is a travel company. So this last year has been hilarious and interesting. But along the way, no matter what you're doing, there's this pull towards a societal kind of struggling way of being, towards get up and work hard. And I will fall into this just like anyone else, you know, oh, well, if I'm not working hard, then I'm not going to be successful. And if I'm not, you know, I have to try my hardest, and all of these strategies that we're taught from the time we're little. And I think the biggest choice that I make is every day when I'm able to say, ooh, that book looks amazing. You know what? I'm going to be naughty. I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to read a book. And this week has just been phenomenal for this, because I wasn't feeling very well at the beginning of the week. I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to get anything done this week. I was really concerned. And my colleague said, why don't you just do whatever feels really good to you? I said, okay, well, I can do that. And so I maybe worked 8 hours this week. Like that's scary to admit, but I maybe worked 8 hours this week, and I accomplished more than I would have working 80 hours. They were the most poignant hours. And the hours in between, I spent reading books that left me so inspired that I wrote a 40-hour marketing campaign in 2 hours. I organized and shaped worlds through a place of just being in flow and in magic and in inspiration, rather than buckling down and doing the work the way that, just bucking that energy of what you have to do, and saying, no, wait a minute, I trust my magic, I trust my heart, I trust my intuition to lead me to exactly what needs to be done. And it usually doesn't make any sense in the moment, I have to say. But when you look back and connect those dots, it comes together so beautifully.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, from what I'm getting from you, the choice that you have made is the choice to trust your intuition, the choice to trust that there is magic in the madness of it all. And just a simple choice that what we have been told is what we have been told. That's all it is. It doesn't mean that it's the way. It's just what we have been told. It's going to be, thank you very much for the information. That's great. I'm going to now go away and take this with me and have the choice and I think that it's an important subject, especially for women. I know I keep going back to women, but we have so many hats that we wear. I dare say that just a little bit more than men, simply because of our roles as, child bearers, and just that preconditioning that we have more home duties than the male species. So we actually go through just a little bit more ups and downs in life, and not to mention the hormones, of the monthly periods and whatnot. So when it comes to making a choice, there is a really big tendency for us to just not even make one, and just trust that this is the flow, and wherever it will take me, I'm just gonna sometimes, it takes being so careful about what flow are you going with the flow, because before you go with your flow, you have to have a good flow of your own, and then go with that flow. That's the real choice. So wow, now can you please tell us, because you talk of a journey where obviously when you were younger and you had this aha moment. Wow, we're making it up as we go along, and so this is a big aha. But what were a couple of one or two periods in your life when you were really challenged by having to make a radical, fearless choice, so that you can come out and get away and detach from the preconditioning of the society? Where were you? What part of the world were you at? What were you doing?
Yeah, I've had a couple of moments, and they looked pretty similar, actually, just because of I think that's a little bit of the way of it for anyone, that you have this kind of cyclical reminder of, oh yes, this is who I am. And if it doesn't sort of catch fully the first time, it'll come back and look the same. The first time for me was when I moved to France for the first time, and it was the last semester of university. And I had decided that I wanted to study abroad, and I really like moved my whole school schedule to be able to do it. And I went over there, and as a result of it being my last semester, it was rather an unplanned thing. I didn't make any plans for after graduation. I didn't line up a job the way everyone else did. I didn't do any of that because I didn't know how this was going to change me. And I didn't know what kind of job I was going to want. And when I crashed back home after this incredible semester abroad, all I wanted to do was go live in France. And so I came back home, worked for kind of 6 months or something to get all my affairs in order. And I literally moved to France. I bought a one-way ticket. I put all my stuff in storage. And I knew that I had $1,000 to find a job and a place to live and a life. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was really, and it was completely magical. I was taking care of it every step of the way. I was couch surfing. I ended up meeting some people who are still some of my best friends in the world. I stumbled into an apartment, and one of the folks I was couch surfing with finally said, "We don't understand why you leave, just stay." And that became, that really led me on a career path that I had not anticipated at all. Years later, I had crashed back to the States again. I had to make a decision about whether I was going to end up living my whole life that far away from my family, because I knew I was starting to get entrenched. And so I decided to come back home. And slowly I fell back into kind of I'm from California. And so I fell back into a very American pace of life, working hard and playing hard, and not really keeping up with the Joneses. That's never really been my thing, but being willing to work to have what I want, and which is a very, I'm sure lots of places have this, but it's a very American sentiment. And so I once again found myself faced with this choice. My mother actually decided to walk El Camino de Santiago, and she invited people. She said, "Hey, if you want to come, I'm going to do this." And when she invited me, I said, "Yeah, sign me up. That sounds awesome." And just around the time that this was happening, a lot of other things were coming together. My travel business was just getting off the ground. I had just met my amazing mentor, Henry Lincoln. And in a very whirlwind summer, I ended up once again putting everything I owned in storage, leaving a long-term relationship. I went and walked El Camino, and I ended up moving to France on the back end unexpectedly. And so I had, the one suitcase in the backpack that I had hiked with. And all of a sudden I was in the middle of winter in the wilds of France, really like far out in the countryside. But once again, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And that is honestly what led to The Heretic. So this is the novel that in some ways is that period in my life. Now, this is definitely fiction, but the magical and mystical experiences that the main character goes through were inspired by that time where I was every day hiking to a new insanely cool place, and I didn't know what was going to be there. I was just sent to some coordinates or sent to a place on a map or told to go hike up that hill and see what I found by this wonderfully mysterious old man. And suddenly I was seeing in the world in ways that I want to say are pretty rare for modern people, but may have been pretty standard for, our ancient Celtic cousins.
Wow. Tell us more about when you immersed into these daily adventures. And I know when we met a few months ago now, sometime in the middle of last year, I remember reading about one of your tours, and this place, this ancient cave in south of France. I'm really interested to hear more about that, but also so I know I love Tom Hanks movies, but I haven't really watched the movie with. So tell us about the code, these coordinates that guide you, and what do you discover? Because I really, take me to your world, please.
So what this part of my work has centered around is this little town in the foothills of the Pyrenees called Rennes-le-Château. And there is a mystery there. And the mystery that we talk about is only about 100 years old. There was a priest who was said to have found a great treasure. And the treasure was never uncovered. And yet all of these codes and mysteries have surfaced around this. Now, what's interesting, what I think is interesting and everyone else thinks is kind of boring about this, is that most of the codes are made up in the last 100 years. And there have been a lot of people making stuff up to throw things into the mix and make the whole story really confusing, and everyone gets tangled in the mystery. And so you have the Da Vinci Code and debunking the Da Vinci Code and debunking the Da Vinci Code. And it's an entire industry. Okay. Now then, underneath that, you have this landscape that is so magical that you walk down the street and you trip over a Celtic standing stone. And you walk down a path and it unfolds into a rock formation that has two different springs that have been considered sacred for millennia that are meeting in this spot. One is iron rich, one is calcium rich. So the red and the white are coming together in this pool. You're going out. The old man walks down the street and he looks like he's 140. And he says, you drink this water, you live forever. We're all really old here, right? And you know, he's been around since the 1800s. It's just, and everywhere is like that. And when you go back through the history of this place, you've got ancient sects of Christians that the Catholic Church wiped out. You've got a huge Templar presence. You have an entire culture, like a country in France that no one talks about, called Occitania, where Jews held prominent positions in government. Women were equal in a way that was unheard of in the Middle Ages. Mary Magdalene is said to have traveled, not to the region that I study, although that's a common misconception now, but to Provence and the southern Occitania region of France. And so you have all of these incredibly amazing and really they're viscerally special, and I don't quite know how to explain that because it's so individual that it's not something I would say, oh, I feel something great, you should too. But when you go there, there's a sense of something more. In the same way that like Christmas Day has a different quality from the day before and the day after, right? It's that kind of a feeling where there's something tangible that's utterly unnameable, that may be because we all agree that it's there, and it may be something else. And so underneath all of this, there is actually this wonderful, all I can say is it's a secret, and I have to present it that way because if I just tell you what it is, you'll go, okay, cool. So, and if you actually go down a path like reading the Heretic, or there are many paths to take to discover this on your own, it'll blow your mind and your heart open. So I'm not going to just say it here, but underneath all of this sort of otherworldly specialness and underneath all these really cool places is some amazing math and science that people knew 3,000 years ago that should be taught in grade school that we don't even know about. And that's what we actually found hidden in code in the churches. And there was no reason that these codes should have led to a secret that goes back 1,000, 3,000, 5,000 years, but it did.
Wow. Whew. And when you found the code or found out about this secret, how did your life transform?
I got really lucky. Like I got lucky in a way that is difficult to believe. So I was just starting my tour company, and we had hired Henry Lincoln, who is really one of the foremost experts on this subject. He wrote the original book that inspired the English speaking world to begin to look into this. He did BBC documentaries on it. He was one of the first researchers to really take it seriously in our age. And we hired him on our very first tour. And as he gave us this presentation, I just sat there with my jaw dropped to the garden floor. I was stunned. I was staring at him like, but do you realize what you've got here? This should change everything. This should change the way we see the world. This fundamentally. And what was amazing is that he looked at me and he said, bingo. And no one had been saying that. He'd been giving this presentation for 10 years and everyone came really interested and they wanted to know more. And there's so much to this story, and people would get really tangled in the mystery, or they'd be like, wow, this is so spiritual and special. And I was like, no, this should be taught in grade school, which is what he had been trying to say. And so after the presentation, he pulled me aside and he leaned in close and said, il faut que tu reviennes, j'ai besoin de toi. Like, you must come back. I need you. And so this is one of those moments. This is one of those moments, like the Da Vinci Code is about to happen to me, right? This old man has just leaned in and said, you must come back. I need you. And you can either take that opportunity or you can wonder what would have happened. And so I said, well, the tour ends on Monday, so how's Tuesday? And I dropped everybody off at the airport and I changed my plane ticket. And the tour ended in Paris, and I went back down to the south of France, rented a car, and just showed up at his house. And I don't think he even expected me. And after that, we began a partnership where he, over the course of the next several years, attempted to get everything that he knew about the history and the mystery of that region, but also a lot more, into my mind. He's now 90. And it was really a case where he was ready to find someone who could carry on the work. He was ready to, not to be done per se, but to get some young legs on the project that still required some hiking.
We can always use a protege, hey, to carry on the legacy and the cause, really. Wow. So, Allysha, how, just before we started this, we started Atomic Self-Love tonight, you and I were talking about what really keeps you up at night and what's really keeping your spark, and just thinking about these, the real life magic that is real life, yes, but unfortunately for most of us, it's not, we do not think it's tangible at all. So where do we start? How do we access this?
Yes, it starts with that question. I love that you asked about this, because this is really where my heart is. My latest project is working with this incredible group of people on a company literally called Real Life Magic. And what we are doing, so we just had this amazing roundtable and sat down, and our vision as a company is empowering humanity to master the magic of being human, right? It's this tricky thing. And it's different for each of us. We all come from a different cultural background. We all come from a different ancestral heritage. We all have different individual unique gifts. So how do we figure this out? And so what we're doing at Real Life Magic, and this is how I came to meet Grace, is we'll be launching this year. We're thinking March. We're not announcing anything yet, but we are putting together a summit. We'll be doing a yearly summit with different teachers from around the world on different subjects. We have psychics and astrologers. We have self-love specialists, and golly, the range is just incredible of the different amazing powerhouse teachers we have that are coming on to share different tools. And so the thought is that through the years, we've had different gurus. You have different teachers who come up, and then you have different people who follow a teacher, and you follow the teacher as far as you can go. And then you go to the next teacher, and then you follow that teacher as far as you can go, or you kind of take the smorgasbord. And so what we want to do is create a place that has resources so that you can sit at a summit with all of these teachers and go, oh, that piece and that piece and that piece applies to me, so that you can really find different ways to shape and hone your individual magic. And underneath that, I've been working with some incredible teachers to put together, and this has been like the heart project of the last several months of my life, a master course. And the master course is really about letting the struggle of the everyday world. We're born into this world that has this chaotic vibration of struggle. And of course we do. Cavemen, okay, they weren't really cavemen, but gatherer hunters just trying to survive. Scary, scary world trying to survive. We trade that for agriculture. Agriculture, probably a lower quality of life, but more stability, more predictability. We get into the whole really long era where everyone's trying to control us. Okay, but we have survival and stability, but it's control. Then, we're coming into an entirely new era for human beings. Like, just literally, historically, that's what's happening right now. The fact that it's the middle of the night, -20 with 4 feet of snow outside where I am, and I'm talking to Grace, who is across the world in a lovely summer evening. That's never, ever been possible before. And so what we're doing right now is entering a new age, and we're at the very, very beginning of it. We can say maybe it started with the Industrial Revolution, maybe it started with there are lots of ways to quantify and codify this. But what we know is that human beings have never before lived in this way. We've never had these technologies. We've never had these possibilities. And so we are absolutely cutting edge. And what our course is doing, the Real Life Magic Master Course, is bringing science as it is now, right up to the edge of where science can go, bringing ancient wisdom and the magic and the time-tested tools of our ancestors to meet that science, and coming together to create a real method to release that struggle. That you look around and it's busy, and you've got shoulds and you've got pressures, and you've got, your grandparents telling you what you have to do. And as we let go of that, what we find is we move to a place where there is magic. And I use this word really intentionally because every culture through time has had some concept of magic. And since the scientific revolution, anything we can explain, we say, that's not magic, that's science. But anything we can't explain, we say, well, that doesn't exist because science can't prove it. So when I say magic, what I mean are the very real and scientific things that science hasn't proven yet. And we all have this experience of having lots and lots of energy when you're in a beautiful space, of being around someone who just seems vivacious and vibrant, of having a sense of flow in your day rather than a sense of struggle. We all know these different experiences of what I call magic. And I think that we all have a sense of that in ourselves, where our magic meets the world. But what we don't always have is a sense of how to get to it. like, how do I do that? Yes, of course, I want to do magic instead of struggle. Like, that's obvious. And so what we're doing in Real Life Magic is we're bringing together teachers so that you can train your individual magic. And underneath that, we're going to be offering courses that bring together the litany of ancient wisdom through the ages with modern science and technology and quantum physics and all that yummy stuff to really talk about how it works. Like, how do I get into a flow state? How do I raise my vibration to get out of anger and into joy? These are scientific, physiological, time-tested. There are ways to interact with these phenomena that are repeatable and that we can learn. And if we can learn them, we can live them.
Wow. I know I am one of the people in your summit, but God, I just want to be one of the students already in the courses, because I believe so much in the power and just the force of the collective. And as I always say, even to my own students, is that you can learn on your own and it's going to take you time, or you can learn with others in a community and really embrace the whole energy of the collective, because I think that it's in the it's in the detachment, because we became very divisive with our ideas about economy, about politics, about religion, in hundreds of years ago, so that we have divided ourselves into factions. And in this division, we've then really forgotten the magic. And I think that, like you say, this is never this kind of you and me from the opposite parts of the world, like summer and winter, snow, and like it's melting, it's sweltering here. And for us to come together and have this conversation, it's never happened before. But what I even see in the future is if when people like you and me continue to educate others and educate ourselves, we'll come to a time, and potentially we may not be physically in this form, but we'll come to a time when humans have access to the capacity for telepathy even. But before that can happen, we need to undivide the division, just really embrace the new level playing field that we are in, that we're so accessible to one another. There's still a little bit, or maybe a lot of resistance to this, only because I believe there are still the different generations, the baby boomers, and so it's still hard for some people to embrace the how do you order food and it shows up on the door and I don't even have to give them cash kind of thing, the Uber Eats, but you know what I mean? But yeah, so when we undivide the division and really learn that there are certain things beyond what mathematics and science is able to show us right now, which is, whatever is behind that. That's just that delicious energy that we just have, especially in the morning. I know for those of you who are listening to Allysha and I today, when you wake up in the morning and if you record, if you're just so religious for 30 days recording how you really feel in that first 30 minutes, you'd notice how different that is to the rest of the day, because the rest of the day is the conditioned, divided self. But that first 30 minutes of the day is potentially where the magic can be accessed, when you are still pure in the state. And I think what Allysha is trying to do is give that to us 24/7, and not just as an individual, but learn together. And so, well, I'm really excited for the summit. I know we've had a conversation on that, but I'm so excited for the actual this course to come out, because I want to be a student in it. I want to get involved. I know there are so many things about me as a specific human being that I wonder about, as a woman, for example. If anybody, if anyone out there can relate, I exert quite a lot of effort to understand my cycle, my periods, the high and low of things, and how to manage those things. And yes, science can help, and some methods can help, but there seems to be always an untouchable, unreachable part of that mystery as to why do I have the flow, the high and the low, and even sometimes why are certain moments so much brighter than other moments? What are these mysteries that no amount of I don't know, gallons of water or veganism or whatnot can actually address? I know there's something in there, and yeah, so I'm so excited. Allysha, how can we where because it's we're only now beginning in February, how can we keep in touch with you, with what you're doing, so that we can yeah, we're eagerly awaiting what's in store.
Yay. So we are currently building our website around real life magic. But in the meantime, you can go to AllyshaLavino.com. My name is super tricky to spell, but Grace has got it up everywhere. So AllyshaLavino.com. And honestly, the best way to stay in touch is to join my mailing list. And what I do is I email once a week. And we really try to make it a fun and interesting thing that shows up in your inbox, right? Because I hate it when I get email that is not awesome. And so what we do is we will, golly, like for Valentine's Day, we've got a few things coming up. We've got, you know, we always think that Valentine's Day is a Hallmark holiday, but actually it's really ancient. So I got an email that just kind of tells you about, no, this is where it came from because love, like perfect for this show, right? Like love is so important, and ancient peoples needed a way to honor that. And so Valentine's Day was born in the 5th century. Chaucer was one of the first people to write about it, right? So it's that kind of juicy little history geek stuff, but as applied to modern life, right? So this is the way of saying, hey, don't worry about Singles Awareness Day. This is a time to love yourself. Ancient people were doing it too. And then the other thing that we do is we find really great stuff. So in February, Pema Chodron, who's this amazing teacher, is doing a really phenomenal course on self-love. And so we're like, oh, we are putting this front and center for, you know.
I love Emma Chodron.
I know, right? Oh my gosh, you have to check out this course because
yes,
it's like the four pillars of really loving. And anyway, so it's something that I'm really looking forward to it, and it's right up your alley. But that's the kind of stuff that you'll see in the newsletter. So I know when you say, oh, sign up for my mailing list, people get a little, oh, I don't know, but we really tried to make it fun and interesting things. And just really letting our community know about what's available to help you level up your life. Because one of the things that I have seen over and over again, I've learned in my life, but I've been doing this for years with so many of my closest, is that we're just not taught. We're taught so many things. We're taught how to do the dishes, and we're taught how to do the laundry, but we're not taught how to do kind of our own housekeeping. In a way that keeps us really healthy and joyful and self-expressed. And I love that you talked about the cycles, right? Because everything in nature is on cycles, whether it's winter or summer or day or night, or happy and sad, up and down, energetic and frankly depressive, right? And we're always kind of trying to stay daytime, summer, happy in our culture. Like if I can just be happy all the time, you know, and it's not about that. It's being really healthy and finding beauty, joy, and magic in whatever is arising. And so and that takes practice, that takes tools, that takes skills that we are not taught in elementary school. And for each of us, it's a little bit different. And so anyway, so this is my dream, is there are amazing teachers all over the world like you doing these wonderful things that are helping people get the information, get the tools, get the support that we need to enter this new era, you know. And Sorry, last thing I have to say is this idea of conflict. You know, in the evolution of humanity, this is normal. We have been in an era of duality. And we are actually entering, and don't take my word for this, look around. This is observation from many of us. So do the observation, do the science yourself. We're entering an age of paradox. And so we're leaving duality. We're moving into paradox. It's very painful for a lot of people. And duality itself is screaming. And so the world looks more divided than it ever has, because what it's shifting to is everybody can scream at the same time and it just sounds like music. And everyone can have different conversations at the same time, and there doesn't need to be conflict. And I can be me and you can be you, and we can train our magic differently and express it differently, and we can both appreciate ourselves and each other. And that's brand new for humans on planet Earth.
Yeah, yeah. It's the unification of diversity that, wow, it brings me to that image when we as humans have been gifted, but not really, with 1,000 different languages, so that the next thing we were hurting one another because we couldn't understand one another. But it's now the picture that you've just painted then is the unification of that diversity, that even though we sing different songs and different melodies, we know we are one and we belong to one another. And we, oh my goodness.
It's even inside of language. We now have English as the lingua franca. But what's amazing about English as a language is it has 4 times as many words as the next closest language, because it adopts words from every language it encounters. And so English is not English. English is German and Arabic and Latin and everything in between. Everywhere English goes and every culture it encounters, it takes in new words and it doesn't change them. And so we have, you know, taboo from, you know, down from your neck of the woods. And we have all of these wonderful things coming together. And so you see it in all the different areas of life where we're becoming a world culture, and we're the first generation of the world culture, you guys. It's amazing.
Oh,
We're literally the first generation of the world culture on planet Earth. Like, it's such an exciting time to be alive.
I know. I just feel like I'm so lucky I was born in 1975, because I get to be the last of the people who did certain things, but also first of the people who got to experience. And I'm just like, I just feel very blessed, and to be able to be part of those, trying to, spread the unification. And yeah. And it warms my heart when you say about how English is actually very all-encompassing, because as a Filipino, I know there are quite a few number of Filipino words in the English language, and it makes me feel that at least that for people to realize that English is not really English per se. It's kind of like a container of all of our expression, and then we just use it to 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 meet
Love
intellectually.
it.
Yeah.
Language is so important because it's expressing a way of life. And English has a really simple grammatic structure. And so whenever English meets another culture's language, English generally becomes the dominant language. But anywhere that the culture of English doesn't have a concept, it just takes the concept from that culture. And so in English, we say bon appetit because there's no bon appetit, right? And languages are so important, and I hope that we preserve every language we ever can. But these concepts, they're that to each of us, you know, it's wonderful to see the way that they can come together, and you can let them be exactly as they are, and we can all understand each other.
Well, I understand you, and I am grateful that I've had you for an hour to myself on the show, and to share you with the audience of the Atomic Self-Love Project. So from the bottom of my heart, I am really excited for what's coming up with Real Life Magic and our collaboration together, and just you being on this show, sharing your magic with us. Thank you, Allysha. Do you have any parting messages for us?
Oh, I just want to say thank you, Grace. I think what you're doing here is so important. Um, at the bottom of all of this, love is a word in English that can often feel diluted. You know, we can love tennis shoes and songs and things like that. But when we get down to love in its truest and most real form, which we can experience almost best when we're loving ourselves, it's really like the magic secret sauce of the universe. So the conversations that you're having, I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing, because these conversations they're the foundation of everything.
Hmm. I share the feeling with you. I'm so glad that we are in this together. Thanks, Allysha. Thank you, everyone. Allysha's website is on the comments above the video, and we love you. And I hope to see you on next Sunday again on the Atomic Self Love Project. We will see you again soon. Bye, everybody. Bye.